event on November 11th.
Mercury Transit, Seminole State College, I'm sure, will be doing. Justin, right?
Yes, yes. I took the liberty of adding a slide to your deck with the information.
Absolutely.
But us at the college here on Monday, November 11th, which is Veterans Day, the Mercury Transit, we're going to be starting here right around 7 a.m. And then I believe the transit starts around 7:30, goes till about 1:30.
You got it.
And we would love anyone that has a solar telescope come out if you'd like. And but we'll definitely be not only doing an outreach here for the college, but we're working on a live stream also, so that we can anyone that can't make it out, that has to work or school, can do that.
Yeah, this is 7 in the morning. It starts 7:30.
7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So come on out if you'd like.
Where are you setting up?
At the Student Center.
At the Student Center,
yeah.
Over at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, where I work, the previous, back in 2016, previous Mercury Transit, I had set my scope up outside. Employees come out from the different buildings and take a look. So going to be doing that again. Had set up also for the solar eclipse a couple years ago now. Beautiful. There is a website called, type in time and date Orlando, or Mercury Transit time and date, Orlando, Florida. And it goes to a website, and it's a wonderful simulation. All right, time of first contact. It gives you the time of transit, right in the middle of the transit, and then last contact. So great simulation. It's a great website. There you go. Swap meet, Christmas party. You have old things like Skyline. Remember that? Nobody knew where it was going to go. Remember that? So we'll do a swap meet at the holiday party. Thank you for the idea, Luke.
Location will be announced.
Location will be Seminole State College.
On campus.
On campus. Over in the utility room.
Now that I've broke my hair, I was salad sexy. Exactly.
Any other? So we have the Mercury Transit. Any other items? I'm glad you showed up.
Moonlight.
What's that?
The moonlight was last week.
Yes.
Was it any effect or whatever? I mean, so many clouds.
Friday was clear as can be.
Yeah.
I know Richard did it over at Seminole. And, over at Starbucks, Lake Mary. Then Saturday it turned out very well. Where did you set up?
I'm in that home.
Okay. Saturday there was
Was it good?
myself, Bob, and
It
Ginger
was out in
Leftwich.
Claremont.
We were at the science
Really
center.
good out there. So
So they had a Science Night Live. So
you guys must have had to live there.
we were kind of outnumbered 2,000 to 2, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So we were busy. We were busy.
We had a lot of stuff to see her.
Yeah. Really? Jeff?
I remember a while back we filled out a survey about if you're interested in different workshops and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering whatever came about.
Nominees are
There was talk of photographing the moon workshop
I learned my lesson about that little deal.
soon. Trish, it was Trish.
All that-
Yes.
Our
I think
education.
it's really important.
Yes.
Workshops,
I think it's a
upcoming
good club.
workshops.
We were just talking just a little bit ago about putting together a Forever Florida imaging event, and then we're also talking about a potential, it's not confirmed yet, but a possible November 4th lunar workshop, either here at the college or somewhere close by. So keep an eye out, nothing's confirmed, but we're working on 2 separate imaging workshops.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I had put a slide up there also about putting your telescope out on Halloween. I've been doing that for decades. And so folks who have moved out of the neighborhood come back to see if I'm still there. So it'll be,
This one?
yeah, October 31st.
Oh, that's a.
No, that's a different one. That's after I had my hair surgery. My hair surgery, which was a failure. So it didn't work too well.
You were on fire.
Yeah. My expression now.
Saturday, everything's
Direct reaction. So yeah, that'll be in 2 Saturdays over here. Bring candy. Bring candy. I have a lot of kids. We're going to start, I'll mention it if nobody else has anything. We're going to start getting into our outreach season. Where the number of schools that are going to be requesting our telescopes is going to grow.
That was so cool. That
Trotwood started. And what was the turnout for Trotwood? For observe the moon.
incredible.
Is Alex here? We had a good 50 or 60 people, I'd say.
Okay.
Wow.
Probably had 3 dozen munchkins, so
Yeah.
there are probably 50, 70 people there. It was quite a good camp.
And then
Let me go get some water. You guys need that? No.
SSC wasn't that busy for Saturday.
Well, we did have a lot of stuff, so maybe we just.
Yeah.
I'm about 100.
Outreach.
Yes, Alex.
I'm definitely gonna go.
The full moon is coming up in a few days.
Yeah.
Here's something pretty cool that I discovered.
Geneva.
Cake,
Oh, yeah.
business card, or a piece of paper,
I've
and a
not
bunch
gone
of
to
regular full-size, loosely folded.
Geneva, yeah.
Take it out in arm's length. Look at the full moon when it's at the horizon. It's a full moon when it's overhead. It's really cool for kids. It's cool for everybody because the full moon looks like it's this on the horizon, and it looks like it's that in the sky. And the moon's about a half a degree at an arm's length. This is maybe 0.6 or 0.7 degrees. It's a little bigger than the moon. But it's the most amazing thing. You could probably win a few beers doing this too, Richard. But it's absolutely phenomenal. Is to look through and see the moon at the horizon, do it again overhead.
Anybody know why that happens? Yeah. And we're so used to looking at things straight on. The brains just soak it in. Then when we look up at the sky, you've got a different perspective on it. So you really put the kibosh on. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Oh, here, do this. Do
And
this.
then when does like the season start? When you start in January. Your turn is January.
And we have our elections.
He said so.
Tonight.
So you're on vacation?
What's that?
You're on vacation?
Yeah, a bunch of fruits. They're trying to throw fruit on the beach.
Oh, something awful. Oh, yeah.
Just overloaded right now. They're very overloaded. Anything else? Questions, comments from the constellations, eyepieces, telescopes? No? We'll have our Geneva viewing nights beginning again in November. Late in November. We have the Friday nights for CFAS members and Saturdays for the public to show up. So, nice skies, wonderful skies over at Geneva, and just absolutely drop dead skies we have over at Forever Florida. So there's some imaging over there.
And forget about my OLED over because it was great on Friday.
Yeah,
It was on right now, the grades were not-
right.
Just take a look at that.
I have an equipment question. I'm just now putting my telescope equipment together, and I have my tripod and my mount and my scope. Phil Castro the other night, when he was telling me about the meters. the feet on my mount are already wearing through the metal. Some people with a little, just a little rubber band or something. Does that help?
They're vibration bags, is what they are. I have no idea the price right now. They make a vibration bag. No, they're bigger. They're bigger, like the size of a hockey puck. What they are is there's a hard bottom, which is the case, and then there's soft vibration absorbing foam, and then there's a hard disc inside that. Yeah, there you go. I guess at this point you could use the lunar rings during the summer, but more like on that idea. So the upper.
Well, I know it, I know when I was at the Science Center a couple months ago, because we were on a rooftop, it was vibrating a little bit, but when your scope is set up on the ground, does the anti-vibration out there? It does. Okay.
If you have them, use them.
I don't yet.
Okay.
I don't yet.
We see
If you
papers
have them, use them,
on
yeah, by all means. Right. Right. So
One lingo, but it's
before
out.
feet finally we're through on
I'm surprised that it's wearing through that fast.
Anybody have any idea what the vibration bags? We bought the trio, say trio. What did it cost? Can't be that expensive.
They're not super expensive.
It's about $30 for three.
You remember from
I don't remember the exact price, but it was like, it was trivial compared to
Okay.
like.
Yeah.
Depends on if you buy brand name or after, Celesta's like $40 or something.
Ain't fun. I got some aftermarket.
Yeah. I bought mine in a back lot, but,
What I do is I just go to Home Depot and I get like the little small pavers.
Yeah.
They're like 50 cents each, and so I show a little concrete block. So if you're on grass somewhere, you set that little bitty concrete block on the grass, and you get lots of surface area, and so your scope doesn't settle during the night either.
Well, I would think the non-name brand would be fine for something like that, where
yeah.
something more sophisticated you may want to go with, and then want.
Home Depot brand concrete works fine.
I have some spare papers at home.
I use the dark.
Yeah, not the maintaining your position.
Yeah, because setting up those sites that are outside, they have tiles that are about, say, 2 feet square. And what I do before I set up my dog, right, I go and I walk around, and you can feel the tiles that are loose.
Yeah.
And if you really set up within, say, 2 tiles of a loose one, every time somebody steps on it, the vibrations come through.
Transmits through
Yeah. Yeah.
adjacent tiles.
So
You
there's
could,
a- there's
you
a
could
few
see it
ones.
Saturday night when I had my scope on Saturday night, I had an vacation, and it's all concrete out there, but just the people walking around nearby, you could see it just constantly transmit.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be
I was on the grass.
a good investment.
It's a better place, really.
I'll make
Still have a few minutes.
What is doing?
Here's a good topic, maybe we'll bring this up next month as well. What do you say when somebody comes to you, you're in the astronomy club, hey, Jimmy or Julie, little Jimmy or Julie needs a telescope for Christmas, what kind of telescope should I get?
Where's Alex?
Binocular telescopes.
Binoculars.
What's your budget or wine?
Exactly.
Little kids, I can tell you from experience, little kids, when they want a telescope, you get them binoculars, you might as well get them a sweater.
There it is, Richard.
Wool sock.
Right
And
there.
I was that little kid.
This one.
Right there.
So you got a sweater.
Yeah, I think that a Dobsonian is the easiest type of scope for a child, well, for adults, really. It's one of the easiest ones to get started with.
Right. Set it down and make sure that the files lined up the way you go.
Yeah, I put a couple of them out there.
Okay.
It's the Orion 4-inch F4, 400 millimeter, nice little scope. I know there are at least 4 of them out there now in this area that people have bought. They're nice, and if you stick in like a 16 millimeter pan optic that has some good field of view, you can really see the rocket launches with it. It's nice, and it has a wide enough field of view that you can track it. It's pretty impressive.
Can you get the
$100.
$100.
Can you get the entire Pleiades
Wow.
in it? Is it?
I don't know.
With a big enough eyepiece, you probably could.
Okay.
It's 400 millimeter focal
Huh?
length?
400 millimeter.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
It has a pretty wide field of view at low.
Because Mr. Bob, you still have that Astro scan?
You bet.
Yeah. So don't ever get, well, if you want to give it to me, but don't ever get rid of it, really. I mean, with something like that for wide field, low power, wide field, you fit Pleiades in there, especially if you've got something transiting through there too.
All right, it makes it 4.5 inch dot Sony, like that one.
Right.
You know, without the go-to.
Right.
And that thing's like dirt cheap. It's $200 or something.
Is that the one that Len was using in the outreach in the picture?
Well,
Mine's
a tabletop.
That was
It's easy to
Skywatcher.
carry, like 5
That was a
pounds,
6-inch Skywatcher, what you see up there.
Yeah.
And it's a solid tube, it's a 4.5 inch, it's awesome.
Right. And that's that 6-inch Skywatcher, Len has brought that over to some of the schools, and so the youngsters on there, really, in no time, and they love it. So primarily finding the moon, such an easy target, and lining it up in the finder scope, and that. If you have an inkling to build your own telescopes, online, there's manufacturers like Stargazer, Steve, that sort of thing, that will have a 4-inch or 4.5 or 6-inch telescopes. And if you buy the kit, it's got everything. I mean, everything in the kit. All you need is a hammer, screwdriver, maybe a box cutter to cut where the hole is there where the focuser goes. The other holes are pre-drilled where the mirror cell goes, that sort of thing. It's got bearings, everything. And, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't ordered one in a number of years. I would say 6 years. When I was going over the Neptune Middle School, we had an astronomy club over there, and put together 4 of those over a few years. We would have an astronomy club, and the kids just love it. And what's great is with these telescope kits, that now, back then it was, you had, before they changed over to a DVD, first one originally had a VHS tape, and it would say, okay, stop the tape. Well, on the DVD, you can just pause it, and it takes you step by step on how to build a telescope. And you just pause it as you're working on the steps that they describe. Then run the next step. Do that, run it. So, not only, you get instructions that guys never read, on putting stuff together. But you also get actual visual on what you're doing. Yes.
Can we get this information posted, like Alex is the one he likes in the
It is.
board?
Look at the website, either the meetup or the Winter Springs branch of CFAS.
Does it have all the information on all the different, because
Yeah.
we have a lot of outreaches coming up
It's
before
on
Christmas.
Facebook. I put together some suggested scopes, and I think the first couple of one is this little 4-inch sky scan, and then the next is the 6-inch sky watcher, and then
Is that like that?
scopes from like $100
Yeah,
to
that's a
$600
6-inch
or something like that. But
Okay, I'll need to look a little further.
do a search on Winter Springs Astronomy Club. Okay. It'll bring up the other branch.
What's that? Ed Tate.
It's photos. Photos. You certainly see the sky.
Gotcha. Cool. Nice. Yes.
I got a question on this. So if it's weekly here on December 11th, but that's not hours. What hours?
From 5 in the morning till midnight. No, a regular meeting hours. Put that for next month. I'll have the hours. Yeah, we're gonna have a big moon this year. Is what's gonna happen. Unfortunately, that's why we're not going to trying to work around Geneva like we have in the previous year. Okay, I think it's time to get the meeting going. Thank you everyone for coming here tonight. Appreciate it. Welcome everyone, welcome. Any newcomers? Yes. Would you mind stating your name and
Yeah, I'm John
your
Frank.
interest in astronomy?
John Frank, and I am definitely a beginner. So I went on the website and it's all about buying binoculars, and I bought a pair of binoculars. And I've kind of been looking at the skies. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Cool.
And just enjoy it. I just moved down here a couple of years ago.
Gotcha. A couple Saturdays on the 19th, if you're free. Come back over here. We're gonna have our spooky star party. But if you're interested at all, and if you're even thinking about buying a telescope,
Yeah,
come on by, because you will have a view through a lot of different telescopes you can see them. So
Yeah, I was hoping to hopefully pick some brains in here.
right, absolutely. Take your time.
Yeah.
And we have lunar scopes also for members. Maybe you can check out. Yeah, check them out on Francisco here. Okay.
I just loaned one out.
Okay. Yeah.
I just loaned out the scopes and stuff. Pretty nice.
Okay.
Yeah, you get them for 3 months, and we have visual of what we have. If you go to our website or lunar scope. Yes, sir. Well,
Hi, thanks. My name's Matt. I joined this afternoon via PayPal. I live out in Geneva. Maybe this is the wrong thing to say, but I'm not really interested at all in observing. I do astrophotography.
we don't have anybody interested.
I also know exactly jack shit about constellations. So I've been doing it for about a year and a half. Kind of sitting in the dark alone at night and thought I'd see if there's any other people out there like me.
Are you Geneva Min from Cloudy Nights?
Yes.
I'm Billy TK.
Hi Billy, nice to meet you.
There you go. There you go.
We've talked.
Yeah, we've talked on the forum.
Oh, there you go. All right. Pitch up. And tonight we want to do the recap. Observe the moon night, or we're going to do election?
Oh, good recap.
All righty. We're going to do you want to do that? All right. We had observed the moon night this past Saturday. I know we mentioned on the pre-show. And so how many took their scopes out, either at home or went someplace? Great. So, did you go by yourself? Did you go to here, Seminole State?
Both.
Trotwood?
Here.
Okay.
Science Center.
Left Witches and I were at the Science Center. So, yeah.
Where are we ever?
We did two. Coffee and Cosmos, we had 4 CFAS members who came out. We had almost 70 people.
Wonderful.
Which is not that, which is a lot for Starbucks.
Well, I was so tempted to come out Friday. I'll tell you that. The moon smacked
It
in
was a really good
Jupiter and
night.
Saturn.
And we saw Neptune as well.
Yeah.
And then the next night I came here and we did it here as well. So
Gotcha. Yeah, Friday was just dropped in clear.
it was.
So,
Saturday surprised us.
Saturday was nothing.
and
Saturday was a surprise.
Saturday we did well at the Science Center. The moon, of course, and Jupiter. So Jupiter was setting, and Saturn. And we, Bob and Ginger, they told me to start packing up, so they had still 40 people in line. 50 people in line, right, to try and get a look at Saturn. 5 after 11, rain. So that was pack up in a hurry. Actually, it was through a
Except that one
industrial
lady,
garbage bag over its Schmidt cap, run it inside. That's what.
and one lady still tried to get under it to look.
Yeah, it was like the old Civil War photographer, you know.
I told her it was a black hole.
So overall, it was a success, and then over a couple weeks, couple Saturdays, I know I keep mentioning it, we have the spooky star party over here. So a lot of telescopes, a lot of kids dressed up for Halloween, have a good time. A lot of telescopes. We can dress up too, even though you've never been. So
Please dress up.
yeah, please dress up. There we go. All righty. Anybody else on observe the movement? Take any photos?
I didn't see anything. No cloud.
I'm disappointed for you. That's frustrating.
Well, I'm disappointed.
Are you in East Coast or?
Yeah, where are you?
Winter for.
But,
It was just
Did you
small
later at
calls
night?
for, I don't know, a minute or less.
what time did you try looking or observing?
But sometimes it was 8 to 11.
On Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday. Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
we
we got
got
we got plenty of observing. You're not like that kid Schroeder and Peanuts, right? Big Pen.
Big Pen, yeah.
Saturday.
Schroeder would bring a piano.
The viewing was outstanding.
It was good.
I'm sorry, Debbie, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we were here at Seminole. We did have beautiful skies here, but we had one young man, a young boy, who had his older brother had given him a telescope for his birthday a year and a half before that. He was setting up his telescope, and he got the moon in there, and people came around, started looking through his telescope as well. So I told him he needed to come, be a member here, and he was just all excited about that. He would be here tonight, but he had a soccer game, which I told him skip the soccer game. But so I think next month though,
All right, we'll have to work out his priorities.
Yeah, but I told him you already have a telescope, you should be a member. So we should see him next month, hopefully.
For the first time, we were trying to set it up. So we got some help.
8 inch?
I know, a little.
Oh, okay. Like a 4.5 or something. Yeah.
A little orange.
Right.
It was
right.
good.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, it's time, Mr. Vogel. Time to do our elections. All right, Mr. Justin.
Yes, we've got,
Justin, can you put the slide up with the nominees?
Yes.
Thanks.
okay, I'm Bob Vogel. I am the outgoing board member at large at the end of my 2-year tour of duty. And as my last official act, I'm going to be running tonight's election, as we do every year, as we update our members, our board members. And before I open the floor for nominations, just understand that all of these positions are open and available for anyone who has an interest in participating at another level. I know everyone likes to come and participate in seeing what programs we have and coming out for observing nights and the like. But you can have a role in shaping the direction of CFAS by becoming a member of the board. And at the present time, well, you may have seen the present board members listed on a previous slide. But this is the nominees as we have them thus far, although, Eric, did you put this slide together?
Yes.
And you decided we don't need a secretary?
Give me got a marker?
We have a ladder and a
I
and
could
a
try and
Sharpie.
burn it into burn it in with a laser.
Just to check, Samira Lummel.
Yeah, write it in with a laser.
Yeah, is part of our nomination. So these are the people so far who have indicated an interest in becoming board members, but they are by no means the only ones that we should need to consider. We're going to do a little caucusing here. We're going to have these people stand over here at the posts, and you'll be able to go over, grill them with your questions, and they meet with your satisfaction, and then we'll go from there.
We've all been released from our felonies and all that other lives of crime.
Background checks have come in on all of them.
Tax return.
They've been cleared. You know that there's no Ukrainian corruption charges being dropped on any of them.
Tax return.
Which we were.
The jury's still out on Richard.
Only one has refused to release his taxes. So again, the floor is open for any nominations, for anyone who wants to throw their finder into the ring, as it were, or their hat, or whatever they got. And seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to close the floor for any.
I so do.
Oh. We have a motion to close the nominations, and we have a second. Okay, so all in favor of closing nominations? Aye. Opposed? Hearing nothing. All right, so we'll move on and to the election. And with this slate presented before you, all those in favor of these members, along with Samira being the board for the coming year, so indicate by raising your hand. Looking for anybody. Okay. And all those opposed? We just have some abstainers? All right. Well, it looks as though by acclamation that we have our board for our coming year.
And so, our new board member at large will win a book about a secret mission. All right, moving right along. We have our Constellation of the Month for Astrophotos. Constellation of the Month, Mr. Vogel.
Do you have a microphone, or we just?
Yes.
I'd like a show of hands from anybody here who's ever had their mother tell them to stop horsing around. If I only had $1 million for every time I heard that, and so yes, we're all familiar with doing a little horsing around, and so I thought we would visit the constellation that's associated with a little bit of horsing around, and 3 years ago we did a focus on Pegasus, which is, of course, we took a flight, flew with Pegasus, and Pegasus, of course, is the big horse in the fall sky. The great square of Pegasus is sort of the anchor. A lot of stars and a lot of other constellations are swirling around it, but it's the big dog in the autumn sky. And at that time, I probably should have included tonight's constellation, which is the little horse, the foal, because it is associated with Pegasus, both in terms of relationship as well as being adjacent, proximity on that. But at that time, for whatever reason, I overlooked it, and so I've decided to come back to it tonight and give it its fair due. So, how many of you have ever heard of Equus, the constellation? And we've got a couple of hands there. How many of you have ever said, "I'm going to go out tonight and observe in Equus"? Because this is going to be my primary focus for the evening. Yeah, I don't see a lot of hands with that, because we're talking here about the little horse. It's the second smallest constellation by area in the sky, the smallest in the northern sky, second only to Crux or the Southern Cross. And unlike Crux, which is easily recognizable because of its asterism, the cross, Equilus has really nothing much in terms of visually to recommend it or to have it stand out. But it is nonetheless one of the original 48 Ptolemaic, ancient constellations, and we see here a couple of artistic depictions of it and some of the mythology associated with it, when it's been called, among other things, Solaris, the brother of Pegasus. So we see it here on the left with Pegasus, or just as a foal here on the right. It's been depicted in ancient, antique, I should say, celestial atlases, such as that by Johannes Hevelius. In one of his, we see again, usually presented along, just as the head is all we see of Equilus. So, as I said, in the night sky, it does not really, no particularly bright stars or any asterism to make it stand out. And as I said, it is 87th out of the 88 in terms of size, 72 square degrees. Crux is only 68, so it beats it out just by a hair. And like I say, if you're looking for it, you would probably just have to look toward the southwest corner of that giant square of Pegasus to get the rough area of the sky where you're going to see it. So what is there to look at? Well, this is an area of the sky that might have been recommended to the Hubble people when they were trying to do one of their deep field views, and they said, let's just pick an area of the sky where there doesn't appear to be anything, and we'll open up our lens and take hundreds of hours and see what appears. And probably if you were to do that, you would indeed find that Equilus has many distant constellations, as does it seemingly almost any direction you want to look. But from our perspective as observers and imagers, I would say that this NGC 7015 probably represents your best opportunity for a bit of a challenge object that you might want to look at. As you can see, we have here really quite a beautiful face-on spiral galaxy at a magnitude of about 13.3, which would put it clearly in the faint fuzzy category from an observational perspective, but certainly one that, if properly imaged, I think could make a nice look, and something apart from the usual suspects. I know that we oftentimes, with our imagers, we get caught up looking at the usual suspects. Certainly among the planets, we look at the gas giants, which are now, of course, fading in the west. But maybe what we need to do is to spend some time looking at the ice giants. Remember, only one spacecraft has ever visited Uranus and Neptune, and they're now in their ascendancy. So maybe this would be a good time to try to get some nice images. Granted, they're not as becoming to the eye because for surface features or anything, but they deserve their due. They're part of the solar system there, and there are a great many other galaxies that certainly deserve our attention beyond Andromeda and the Pinwheel and the Whirlpool and the like. And this, I think, would be one of them here. A nice spiral galaxy that's discovered here by Eduardo Stefan in 1878. Much more challenging would be 7040, another spiral galaxy. It's a good bit more distant, at 260 million light years, and only about half the diameter or less even than our Milky Way, and coming in at about roughly 15 magnitude. It's probably going to be a challenge to get certainly in the eyepiece, and maybe, but it's not really going to show a lot of detail even in image, but it is nice, nonetheless, a nice face-on with a great many nice foreground stars that would sort of frame it out nicely. And the third object is this another barred spiral, a little bit closer and a little bit larger, and this is about the same size as the Milky Way. So 7046 was discovered by Herschel in the 18th century, and coming in at, again, around 13.8. So it might, again, present a challenge to you. So there's three objects. There's no Messiers, there's no other deep sky objects of any note beyond this in Equilus at the present time. Maybe you'll find something there that hasn't been discovered as yet. But as you can see, there are some background galaxies as well in this particular image. So let's make it a photo finish. Get out there and see what you can find in Equinus. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Now, we're going to do astrophotographs of the month.
As soon as we get the system going here.
Yeah. So if it's your photograph, by all means, speak up and let us know all about it, what you used, where you took it.
All right, so as has been mentioned earlier in the program, CFAS does have a number of accomplished astrophotographers. So every month we ask people, send us a picture or something that you shot this month and we'll showcase it. And you can tell people about it a little bit. Our most prolific imager this month has been Frank Kane, who sent in 3 pictures. This is the Ghost of Cassiopeia. And he shot it with an Atek 33L with filters and a Skywatcher 190 Mac Newt and his Paramount Mighty. Processed in Pixinsight and Photoshop. You want to add anything to this, Frank? Or did I...
No, just it's kind of a Halloween theme with these 3. So we have a ghost, and as you'll see, there's more spooky things to come.
Location.
Oh, my driveway in Winter Springs.
Yes, all of these are from his driveway. This is one of my favorite nebula, the Wizard Nebula, also very appropriate for Halloween, and also shot pretty impressive for a shot from his driveway.
Yeah, it's quite a driveway.
Yes. Did you shoot out the street lights?
I wish.
He does drive 3 hours to get to CFAS. He lives out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And finally, another favorite, the Veil Nebula, also well known as the Witch's Broom. It's a beautiful emission object in Cygnus. Anything you want to add to? I'm stealing your thunder here.
No, I mean, we saw a similar one last month. This one's actually processed with natural colors, so it really looks like that. It's pretty cool.
Did you use that narrowband filter from Optilon for this, or is this RGB?
Technically it's HA RGB.
Okay, so some narrowband combined with RGB data.
How long exposure did you use?
They're all around 5 hours or so.
Each photo.
Oh, for narrowband, I've been doing 5-minute exposures, and for the wideband stuff, 2 minutes.
2 minutes and 5 minutes.
Yep.
Cool. All right, our next one is called Halloween Moon. David Murray, are you here?
Yep.
Why don't you tell us about this, David?
That's actually, I call it my spooky Halloween moons. It's actually a partial lunar eclipse back in May of 2016. I got up early in the morning to catch the partial, and I was clouded out just as dawn was breaking and the sun was setting, the moon was setting behind some trees. I was able to capture a nice clear shot before the clouds rolled in again. I was taken with a Nikon with 250mm lens.
Very nice, David. Thank you. All right, and the last one is mine. This is Luna. I shot this on the night of the International Observer Moon Night from here at the planetarium. At the end of the night, when everybody's packing up and leaving, I just took the eyepiece out and stuck a camera, my DSLR, on the back and took some shots. This is with Matt Cassegrain 180mm aperture, so it's about 2750 millimeters focal length. It looks really over-sharpened in this picture. I'm not normally an over-sharpener, but I'm sorry, that's against the rules. You're not supposed to complain about the projector system. It's entirely over-sharpened, but anyway, yes, that was taken on the night of the International Observer Moon.
So the number was smaller. It looked like it was that night. The fact that it was a 50%.
Well, at the beginning of the night, Justin, do you have a laser pointer?
Yes.
I see one right there. That's probably it. Which button?
The central peak where you couldn't focus.
Yeah, it's one of these buttons. Yeah. At the beginning of the night, this was a solid black circle, and there was this little bitty dot right in there. And by the end of the night, this crater wall had lit up. It's really amazing. I'm going to talk about observing the moon in a minute, but in the course of an hour, you can see differences in the shadows on the moon. If you see something really cool where the shadow is really doing something neat, you better take a picture of it right away because it may not last another 30 minutes from when you spot it.
When it's still daylight, you couldn't even see the central peak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had a hard time looking at it in daylight. It looked better in other scopes than it did mine. I'm not sure why, but I went to Jupiter and Saturn. That's actually kind of fun. If you can find Jupiter and Saturn in a blue sky, people really freak out about seeing those in the blue sky. Jupiter popped out really, really well. Saturn was a bit of a game, and it was like, oh, and I'm like, oh, you can't hardly see it. You know, your eye tries to focus past it. But people got really excited about it because they were like, I see it, Mom, I see it, Mom. And then Mom would look, and she's like, I don't see nothing. And then Dad would look, and he'd go, I see it. And then she'd have to look again, and then she'd finally see it. And it was like, wow, this is, if you make it hard for people, it's actually kind of fun. I didn't realize that. So it was an interesting experience. How did I get off on that? Anyway, that's my moon. Yes, Elaine?
We talked about with the people looking through that Apollo 11, where Apollo 11 landed was here, and a lot of lunar landing spots are visible in what we could see on the Observe the Moon night, and they thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I always do the International Observe the Moon night is always during the first quarter, and I do my Coffee and Cosmos event in the first quarter as well. It's really the best time to look at the moon. You get more features and things like that. You know what? Speaking of which, why don't we start our next program? Yes, though. Another question.
I've got a glimpse of Venus Saturday.
Oh, cool.
After sunset. So
are you sure it was Venus, Eric?
Absolutely.
All right.
He always thinks he's
Inside joke. Don't worry. Yes.
On Saturday, one of the most common questions I got was like, "Oh, can you see
the flag?"
Right. And obviously, like the answer is no. But is there an actual telescope that exists aside from like, the event horizon?
Now, you know what? I'm going to let Eric talk about this because Eric did the math once.
Okay. Years ago at Science Center, rainy night. So to see the flag, all right, the little angle at subtens, you would need a mirror at least 480 feet close. Okay. So
my scope.
we have that in a loaner program. And then to see Neil Armstrong's boot print, you need a mirror at least 1,200 feet.
So you would
and
need
then it at its closest, and then no humidity, no wind. Right.
Yeah, you'd have to be in orbit too.
Right, yeah.
The atmosphere would never let you see.
That's what I told people. I just wanted to make sure. Actually, we should tell them, take this card and punch a hole in it.
That's a really good exercise. There's no other way to convince people that the moon doesn't get bigger. All right. So in honor of International Observe the Moon Month, our topic tonight is mostly the moon. So I'm going to talk a bit about observing the moon. This is sort of 2 mini programs long. And of course, why do we want to observe the moon? Well, number one, it is immune to light pollution. No whining about your neighbor's lights, no whining about downtown Orlando, or this, that, or the other thing. It's not like narrowband is light pollution resistant either. The moon is immune to light pollution. So you're good to go. It's available every month. It's not like you can only see it in the fall without seeing it past your bedtime. So every month it is puts on a show for you all day and all night. You can also observe it during the day, of course. And weather is not as critical. Now, if it's cloudy, you can't see the moon, but a lot of times when it's sort of partly cloudy, you can see the moon, and then when it's kind of hazy, you can also see the moon. You can even look at the moon through a telescope and identify surface features that are quite small when there is a bit of haze or it's very humid. And when I would throw in the towel for deep sky astrophotography, the moon is still a perfectly good visual target as well as a good photographic target. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's very dynamic and changes a lot in the space of even a half an hour. And it's not the same every month. I've got an animation of libration I'm going to show you in a second. You can also observe the moon naked eye. There are features that we have named from antiquity that are available just by looking up at it. And the slightest amount, even the slightest amount of optical aid will pop out a lot of craters and make more features available to you. If you're interested in astrophotography, the moon is about the easiest thing you can photograph. You can literally just hold your phone up to the eyepiece and take pictures of it and get results that you would be happy with to put on Facebook. If it's too complicated, I can send these two little girls to your house to help you do it as well. I mean, this is the #1 children activity at my Cosmic Cosmos events, is kids playing with the cell phone and driving around with the joystick while they record a video. It is that doable. If you want to go a little higher quality, it's very easy to stick a DSLR on the back of almost any telescope. You can get adapters to put on the back, and you rack the focuser in and out just like it was an eyepiece, except it's a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. They also make adapters for point and shoot cameras, and even adapters that hold the cell phone still, so you don't have, it's not like playing a video game trying to get the moon in just the right place while you press the picture and you adjust everything, and you only have 8 fingers, trying to work this all at the same time. Some vital stats, fun things about the moon to know. They're really great to talk about to the general public. It is 2,160 miles across. The United States is just shy of 2,700 miles across, so it's almost as wide as the entire United States. So when you're visualizing how large those features are, imagine the East Coast on one side and California on the other side. You can even see where, look at this. Over here where it's dark, that's where California is having their blackout in San Francisco right now. Those fires. It is 6,790 miles in circumference, so it's quite a run around. This is really cool. It's 81 quintillion tons. Now tell me, what kid doesn't want to know how much does the moon weigh? Well, 81 quintillion tons. How much is a quintillion? Well, it's a 1 with 18 zeros. So it is very, very heavy. If you brought it down to Earth and put it in your bedroom, it would kill everybody, so don't do that. 50 million square miles, so lots of room for growth. You can stake your spot on the moon. Maybe one day there'll be cities on the moon. My favorite line in all of Star Trek is, "Oh, Tycho, yeah, there's 50 million people who live there now." And I'm like, yeah. And I tell you this, if there was a one-way trip to the moon, I would absolutely sign up in a heartbeat. And I would need to do that because my wife would kill me if she caught me anyway. The difference between the daylight side of the moon and the nighttime side of the moon is over 500 degrees. So it goes from negative, you think the weather in Florida is bad. We go from negative 280 degrees, that's Fahrenheit, I didn't write that up there, but I should probably mention that, that's Fahrenheit. Since we're in America, I didn't want to use Celsius and make anybody's head explode. But that's pretty big range of and when you're looking at the first quarter moon, it's not like right across the Terminator, but on the left side of the moon, it's like really, really cold, and on the right side of the moon, it's really, really hot. Well, I guess it depends on what kind of telescope you're using as to whether it's left or right, but you get the idea. The side with the sun on it is warmer than the side without the sun on it. It moves at a speedy 2,287 miles an hour, so it's booking. And it's about 250,000 miles away. It kind of rocks back and forth. And of course, the moon is all white and gray, and it's just, wow, it's like a giant mirror up there. This is really cool. Only 7% of the sunlight that hits the moon is actually reflected back at the Earth. It has a very low, it's called albedo. It actually looks like kind of charcoal. So if you've seen those charcoal briquettes, that you cook your steaks on, it's actually very, very dark. But of course, the sun's shining straight down on it, and we need to do a long exposure so it doesn't look like a big dark thing. There is one photographer I've seen on Facebook. He's been processing his images so that the moon looks very dark, and it's actually they're quite stunning and beautiful. I need to figure out how he does it so I can steal his technique, because I like it. Now the moon, as it goes on its orbit around the Earth, it wobbles. I'm being a little overgeneral here, but I found this great animation from NASA to show you how the moon wobbles. And so, there's actually music too. I'm going to kill the music, because I think I'm going to kill the music. Yeah, okay. So just watch it. You see how it's rocking back and forth. An extra 10% of the moon is visible on the limbs based on how it rocks back and forth. And the shadow play that you see every month changes because of that. There are cool things, kind of asterisms of the moon, that you can see that aren't available every month. It depends on the libration and the angle of of the moon as the sun is coming up over those features. Okay, that's pretty cool. Just
So
bouncing.
what is the oscillation time? What is the period for an oscillation cycle? Do you know?
Oh, no. I do not know.
Isn't it like?
Yeah. It is, I mean, it varies from month, it's more than a month, because it's never the same, exactly a month later, it's gonna be quite different. And really what it is the orbit is elliptical, and so it keeps the same face towards you. So as it speeds up on that elliptical orbit, you actually catch up and slow down a little bit. So you get a little bit ahead of the moon, and you see a little more on one side, and then you get a little behind the moon, and you see more on the other side. So it's not actually so much the moon wobbling as it is it's like being on a merry-go-round and the person next to you is moving at a different speed. And so you see different parts of them because you're not moving at necessarily at the same rate. So some lunar geography. If you're going to look at the moon, you should learn some stuff. The lunar Maria. This is my, do not adjust your projector or your eyeglasses. This is my attempt to kind of attempt to represent the moon as it looks naked eye. You can kind of make out Tycho a little bit. Naked eye is kind of lost in this, but it's a poor approximation. But the Maria are the most distinctive. These dark areas are the most distinctive feature of the moon visually, even if you don't have any optical aid. Originally, they were mistaken for seas, so they thought, well, there must be seas up there. But actually, they are seas, but they're seas of lava composed of basaltic rock. They only cover 16% of the lunar surface, but most of them are on our side of the moon, which is a very interesting piece of information. And why are more of them on our side of the moon than on the far side of the moon, beyond the scope of this conversation? The iron-rich material makes them darker than the surrounding highlands, which are the brighter areas around it. And there's still active debate as to whether volcanic eruptions filled in the impact basins, or if the impacts themselves were so large that they pierced down to where there was molten magma below, and of course that came up and filled the area. Let's use like some binoculars or something and kind of bring that out a little bit. And this is more what it would look with just. Now, earlier I said something about kids not wanting binoculars. I really resisted binoculars because I wanted a telescope. And I was well into my adult years before I finally looked at the Milky Way with binoculars. And let me tell you, oh my, what an idiot I had been all my life. The Milky Way with binoculars is amazing, especially if you go somewhere dark and you look at the dark nebula. It's the most ethereal, spooky, tenuous thing you've ever seen in your life. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. A pair of binoculars will bring in quite a bit of lunar features. You can see all sorts of things going on here. We have names for the Maria. These are not all of the Maria. So if there's any Lunar Jeopardy champions here, no, I did not list them all. But these are the major Maria that you may be familiar with. Mare Serenitatis and Mare Ebrium. If for some reason you do not want to sound like an extra from a Harry Potter movie, we could also talk about you could list them by their English names, the Ocean of Storms, and Sea of Tranquility base here, the Eagle has landed. So pretty cool. Some of the larger craters are also filled with lava. And if you look closely at these craters, it's not really obvious how lava got in there, but they are near, the Maria. So obviously there was a lot of molten stuff available when these craters, sometime after these craters formed, to fill in and make them flat. So let's see. Yeah, I just said all that stuff. Variations. Oh. Okay. So yeah, see how there's some variations in the coloring here? That's differences in contents, mostly titanium and iron, things like that are there, and those varying concentrations make the colors come out a little bit differently. The lunar rays. I need to hang on. Let me get over here. So lunar rays, like these things here, Like, there's a bullet hole and stuff which shoots everywhere. The sound effects, my kids loved that when I was little. You just made me your president. These rays actually are one of the few lunar features that show up best during full moon. So when you're looking at it at first quarter, the craters really pop out, but these lunar rays actually show up better at full moon. It's one of the few things that really show up well during full moon, and there's quite a few cool ones to look at. Okay. The lunar highlands are pretty much everything else that you see. All of these white areas, they are a good bit higher than the seas, which kind of makes sense, whether the seas are water or lava basins that are frozen. They do have, that's kind of cool, isn't it? If you think about it, rock is just frozen lava. But okay, so they do have a higher elevation than the seas, and they're much brighter than the Maria, and they're richer in aluminum and titanium, and they also contain less iron. Lots of stuff up there. They're also volcanic, and they cooled slower than the Maria, and they're made of something called, I'm not going to say that word, anorthosite. Yep. Anorthosite. Okay, Justin said it right, so I get an A there. They're much older than the Maria, which you can tell there's more craters in these highland areas, and there are fewer craters in the Maria. That's one of the ways you can tell, at least relatively, a fresh area on the moon doesn't have many impacts on it. And if it's been hit by lots and lots of craters, it's probably been there for a lot longer. We have mountains on the moon, which are cool. This is the Apennine mountain range, and it's actually considered young. It's only 3.9 billion years old. It's about 370 miles long as far as the range of the mountains. There we go. So impact craters, other than the rays coming off of them, they look pretty boring during full moon. You really can't see much in the much detail-wise. But when the sun is coming in at an angle, they cast shadows, and you see the relief and the 3D nature of them. A lot of the craters have smooth, flat floors. Here you can see some that are. This is Plato filled with lava. Not frozen lava, and then you've got some flat, craters up here. And you also have craters that have big impacts in them, or big mountains in the middle. This guy here, only the larger craters have that. And what that is a rebound from when the impact happened. When the object hit the moon, it vaporized and melted everything, and it's sort of like a water drop. And so it kind of splashed back up in the center, and it made that. This is Petavius, the big one with all the lines in it. I'll talk about what those lines are in a minute. And Rodsley right next to it, which also has its own little central peak system. The central peaks are pretty cool. Like I showed you in the picture I took on International Observe the Moon Night, that one little peak was sticking up into the sunlight when the rest of the crater was dark. Here's a sample where Pythagoras doing the same thing, a big dark crater and a little mountain peak just sticking right up there into the sunlight. This is called the Plato hook. And this little thing changes from month to month. Again, it depends on the libration or how the moon appears to be tilted from the Earth as to whether that is visible in the sunlight or not. The lunar X. This is actually two craters where the rims of the craters are lit up, and it makes an X-like feature, and that's only available on some months as well. This is one I discovered. I call it the Grumpy Gunkin. There's two little eyes and a little frown here, a little monster. I'm like, oh, this is cool, there's a monster. My wife sees a double horn thing here, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's terrifying. I like this better. This is kid-friendly, I think. Well, maybe it's kid-friendly, I don't know. That looks like an R-rated movie or something. Don't do that. But this is pretty cool. And this is two little peaks. When I saw that, I'm like, I had to look up on the lunar atlas and see what was there. And there's two little mountains just jutting right up out of the plain there. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And again, you can't see it every month. Down at the Winter Star Party last year, I caught this image. I was shooting the Earth shine and the moon, and two little. Now these aren't necessarily peaks. This is just features that were poking out that were high enough to where the sun was reaching them, and it lit up and made those little horns or little things poking out there at the bottom. Pretty cool. We also have rills. That's what these little things here are. This is called a rill, a sinuous rill. A sinuous rill is it usually has a curved path. It looks like a river, and they are primarily made of collapsed lava tubes. We also have the arcuate rills, and those, I never considered the fact that there was going to be, I forgot there's this big planetarium thing in front. So when you get this little kind of a double ring thing, that is also collapsed lava. Here's another image. Usually they're around some craters. They're also around some Mount Maria. And this is where there was, the lava moved out and sort of left a hole, and then it sort of kind of collapsed in on itself. We also have straight rills, like the Valles Alps here, which is basically, again, just a big straight section. These are almost all straight, and it just sort of collapsed. There's Maria on either side of this, and I imagine there was probably a tunnel where the Maria flew underneath here, and it cleaned it all out and it made a really big area, and then suddenly, it all collapsed on itself. There's also, I love these. These are called dorsum. These little wrinkles is also where the lava was cooling and contracted, and it created these little ridges. And so these are collapsed lava tubes, and this is where everything. This is where it sort of ridges, and you can only see that when the sun is shining at an angle. If the sun is shining straight down, you can't see these at all. Actually, you can't really see these either unless the sun is at an angle. Also, there are volcanoes on the moon, cinder cones and domes. And right here, there's some examples of these domes. A little bitty bump with a little hole in the middle, like little pimples. And it's like, what are those little things? Those are little tiny volcanic vents, little lunar domes. So lots of things to look at and see on the moon, to learn about lunar geology and how the moon was formed. There are science opportunities. If you want to be a real amateur astronomer instead of just a lunar observer, there are things you can participate in, real science projects. Occultations. So sometimes the moon moves in front of a star or grazes a star, and you can catch a star winking on and off as it moves across the shadow, across the mountains. Or asteroids will go behind the moon or next to the moon. And we need amateurs to record those things, because it requires that you be very portable, because it's not like everybody in the United States can see this occultation. You have to be in a certain place. So there may be a band through Central Florida or a band through North Florida, or it may be 30 miles from your house, and you may have to take your telescope and go there to do it. But there are organizations, I'll list some in a few minutes, where they will train you how to make the observations, how to make sure the time is correct, and you can report that data. And we have lots of orbiting spacecraft collecting data, but we still need that kind of data. We use that to determine accurate delta T, which is basically how time is varying on Earth, the difference between astronomy time and civil time. We also can use that to refine the positions of asteroids to tell where they're going to be. You never know. We may need a more accurate asteroid data, because one may be coming towards the Earth, and we need to know if it's going to hit us or not. You might want to know. So anyway, those sorts of things are ideally suited for amateur participation, because amateurs have all the equipment and are very mobile and can do that sort of thing. Transient lunar phenomena. And I remember, I've been doing this long enough. When I was very young amateur astronomer, transient lunar phenomena, the professionals would basically mock the amateurs, and then later on they found out it was real. There's stuff's happening on the moon. The moon is not dead. Stuff is going on. There are two things that happen. One is meteor impacts. We had a meteor impact during the lunar eclipse back in January, actually, and we've actually learned a lot from observations of meteor impacts on the moon. If two people observe the same impact, if only one person sees the impact, they see a flash. It could be anything. It could be a meteor or a lightning bug or something. But if you get two people see the same flash at the same time, it means something probably hit the moon. And they can go back and do follow-up observations with orbiting spacecraft or with larger telescopes. And we actually have learned a good bit about impact physics from some of these impacts by being able to observe them immediately after. There's also, there are places on the moon where things happen regularly in the same place. We don't know what they are. I'm just being kind of dramatic. But really, something is going on. There are actually charted locations on the moon where every now and then there is a flash of light. Is it an active volcano? Is there some diamond buried in the sand that when the sun hits it just right, it glints? We don't know. And we can't figure it out necessarily just from orbiting spacecraft. But amateurs on the ground watch those spots and report when they happen. If we get multiple reports, then we get some kind of an idea of how frequent something is happening at that location, and that may give us information we need later on to either predict when it may happen or figure out what it is that's going on. There's also lunar topography that you can help contribute to studying. Primarily, it's related to the timing of the first appearance of shadow features from when the sun comes across. We have orbiting spacecraft, and we have laser data for height data for the moon. But at in some places, that height data is not very dense. It's very dense at the poles. It's not so dense near the equator. In fact, there are areas where it's as much as 4 kilometers apart. There could be undiscovered lunar domes that haven't been cataloged yet on the moon, and you could discover them because the orbiting spacecraft aren't necessarily there at the right time to catch it when the sun is just in the right place, and so you don't see that shadow coming across. And a lot of features, when the sun is too much overhead, they just don't stand out and you can't see them. So there is actually, believe it or not, an opportunity for an amateur to find something on the moon that we don't know about. It would be really cool. Small scale, okay, I just said all that. So small scale features can only be detected by, the low angle of illumination. So for more information about observing the moon or photographing the moon or learning more about the moon, the Astronomical League has a lunar observing program, which will teach you a great deal about lunar geography and how to find your way on the moon. One of the most comprehensive lunar observing programs is actually the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program. That one is considerably detailed, and you will learn some lunar geography and geology from that. If you're interested in studying the moon and contributing scientific observations of lunar phenomena, whether you're looking for an uncharted lunar dome or helping to gather information about transits or timings for asteroid or star occultations, ALPO is where you want to go for that. My favorite lunar map is Dial-A-Moon, a NASA website. I love that tail end of the URL 4442. That's your tax dollars at work. But Dial-A-Moon is one of the best lunar visualizations that I know of. It's completely synthesized, and it does a really good job of showing you what the moon looks like right now, including how the shadows come across the craters. So things like the lunar X and the Plato Hook, you can find that on Dial-A-Moon by just skipping through the months and looking for those features. Also, another really good free resource is the Virtual Moon Atlas, which is quite extensive. Moon Atlas. It's all free, all online, and you can download it and go from there. And that's all, folks. Go look at the moon. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the moon. Any questions about the moon? It's 81 quintillion tons.
So use your legs. Use your legs. Not your back.
It's one of 18 zeros.
Richard, can I get a full copy of this deck?
Justin? Don't make me hurt you. That's another inside joke. All right. I'm done.
All right.
You want this back, or are you just going to jump into Justin?
let's go over to Justin.
Oh, hang on. There is a request to go back to the last slide. Everybody take a picture.
Take a photo.
The Isabel Williamson program, that's the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. That is a serious group. Those guys are pretty serious. They do some good work up there.
So I need about 5 minutes to warm up the projector. So now would be a perfect time for a quick bathroom break. There's lots of soda out there and there's still cookies. Grab those last few cookies. But grab a quick snack and we will start probably right at 8 o'clock.
There's a good book, Cassandra Project, about a secret trip to the moon or a secret project. Lunar landing.
And I wanted to just give everyone a heads up on the Spooky Star Party. Some of you that have done it with us before in the past, and some of you that are new. We have two really big events here at the planetarium every year. Derek is a huge Halloween geek as well as I am, so we really like to celebrate Halloween. So the Spooky Star Party is our kind of first big kickoff star party of the fall season, and then we have our Winter Sky Festival in January. Those are the two big ones. But the Spooky Star Party is a lot of fun. We take over this entire building. We have, it's a star party first and foremost. Again, just a huge outreach event, try and educate the community as much as possible, give them an opportunity to look at the sky. But it's an entire science-themed Halloween party. We have the Avian Reconditioning Center coming out. They bring their owls, they bring all their raptors, red tails, baldies, so that's pretty cool. We've got a bat sanctuary coming out. They're bringing their bats, their snakes, their spiders. We do a lot of fossil hunting, so we have thousands of extra multi-million-year-old fossil teeth that we set up in these kind of little kiddie pools filled with sand, and the kids get to sift through the sand and take home whatever fossils they find. A lot of the faculty come over, our science professors, and do all sorts of workshops with the kids, and tons of candy. So the north parking lot on this side will just be filled, hopefully, with lots of telescopes. If you're an advanced astronomer, you're an intermediate or beginner, bring your scope out and set it up and just have fun. And if people line up behind you and want to see what you're looking at, then great. If you don't have a scope and just want to come out and just be part of the fun and help answer questions, that's great too. So this all kind of happens next Saturday, October 19th. It's from 5 to 10. Most of the telescope stuff will start around 7, so about a 3-hour window. But set up, come out and have fun, pass out candy to the kids. And we usually get anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 people. Last year, the skies didn't cooperate very well, and we had a lot of fun, but we did no observing, unfortunately, but still a good time. But hopefully, fingers crossed, weather will be nice, and we'll have some fun. So if you can come out to that, it'd be fantastic. The show you're about to see is the show that we did on Saturday for International Observe the Moon night. And I want to thank again everyone that came out to help us here. I think Richard counted somewhere just around 100 people that came out. We had 2 sold-out shows here in the Dome. The first sold-out show was Luna, which is the show you're about to see now. And it's not going to be anything brand new to probably a lot of you, but it's just our one of our primary goals here at the planetarium is to educate the public as much as possible. And the show mainly talks about the moon and then where we're going next and what other fantastic moons out there are worth traveling to. So show's just under an hour, and we'll get started. Okay. And you're not going to hear Frank tonight, unfortunately. I've replaced him with a little bit more ambient music. Well, as long as Homo sapiens have looked at the skies, the moon has been one of the major celestial objects. Maybe even studied more than the sun. Yes, we know the sun's the all-powerful center of the solar system, but you really can't look at it, can you? Humans were better able to look and study the moon. Well, tonight we're going to talk about some common misconceptions about the moon, and what I need everyone's help to do the best they can when we're doing outreach to just nicely make these corrections when you hear or see them. And unfortunately, it's not usually the kids that you need to correct, it's usually the adults. People get blown away when you tell them the moon can only be seen that the moon can only be seen at night, but of course we know that it can be seen during the day. The moon makes its own light instead of reflected sunlight. But the moon's phases are caused by the Earth's shadow. Caused by clouds, we've heard this many times. The moon takes only one day to orbit the Earth. The moon orbits the sun instead of the Earth. And of course, correcting people on the dark side of the moon. Well, we've been watching the moon for as long as we've been alive, and back 3500 BC, Babylonians, Sin and Nana were the lunar deities of Mesopotamia, and they would build incredible ziggurats to both worship and study the moon, study the sun. The Greeks and Romans had Selene and Luna as their moon goddesses. And as we're going to learn later in the show on where we're going next to the moon, Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo, and Diana, Greek and Roman goddesses of the moon and of the hunt. Well, if we're going to start anywhere, we probably need to start on the formation of the moon. There's been a lot said about where it came from, how it came to be what we see today. So let's talk a little bit about that. There were three major theories for quite a long time. The fission theory was that the moon was once part of the Earth and somehow separated from it, possibly coming from an area that is now the Pacific Ocean. But if that were true, the present-day moon should contain some kind of fossil evidence of this, but it doesn't. The capture theory that somehow the moon was captured by the gravitational field from the Earth, but the physics don't work for that either. The co-formation theory that the Earth and the moon condensed together from a nebula that formed our solar system. But if that were true, the moon would have the same composition as the Earth. And we know that it doesn't. That leaves us with the giant impact theory. This next set of videos came to us from NASA, and they go over the history of the moon. The basic idea is this: about 4.5 billion years ago, a young planet Earth, a mere 50 million years old at the time, and not the solid object we know today, experienced the largest impact of its history. Another planetary body, roughly the mass of Mars, had formed nearby with an orbit that placed it in a collision course with Earth. This object was Theia. When young Earth and this rogue body collided, the energy involved was 100 million times larger than the much later event believed to have wiped out the dinosaurs. The early giant collision destroyed the rogue body, vaporized the upper layers of Earth's mantle, and ejected large amounts of debris into Earth orbit. Our moon was formed from this debris. Well, the moon has an incredible gravitational influence on the Earth. And the most commonly known effects are in the form of tides. Well, next I want to show you a couple demonstrations of gravity, and then let's talk about how that affects the moon. This was from the Apollo 15. And Commander David Scott in 1971 ran an experiment dropping a feather and a hammer on the moon. And I'm not sure why I'm buffering here. Who's seen this video before? Fantastic.
Do they both land at the same time?
Don't spoil it.
You'll never guess. Let's see if that works. Hope I didn't lose internet.
21st century snow crash.
Mm-hmm. Well, shoot. That probably means my next video will not play either, but let's give it a try. Huh? Okay, well, I'm going to have to narrate then. Those two videos, the first one, of course, is the Apollo 15 experiment, showing that in the moon's environment, with lack of air resistance, that both the hammer and the feather would land at the same time. Professor Brian Cox did a similar experiment at a place in Virginia where they can pump all the air out of this giant cylinder. And he dropped a bowling ball and a feather at the same time. And without that air resistance, both the bowling ball and the feathers on Earth landed at the exact same time. I don't think I have any more videos in this slide, so we shouldn't have to worry about that further. But let's talk about the moon's gravity. The moon, as we know, its gravity pulls on our Earth, pulls at our water, tugs at our oceans, and can move trillions of gallons of water multiple times a day as the Earth spins, as the Earth rotates, based on where the moon is, will pull the water in that direction. Well, the moon also works as a stabilizing force for the Earth. Although you may think the moon has nothing to do with it, the moon stabilizes the Earth on its axis. Let's jump to Mars real quick. A planet like Mars, which has only 2 tiny moons, tilts its axis as much as 10 times because it doesn't have anything to stabilize it. So if the Earth had no moon, its tilt could exceed 45 degrees at times. Hence, the world may spin on its sides. The poles may turn from cold to hot, and the equator may become freezing at times. So without the moon to stabilize the Earth's axis, an ice age would hit different parts of the world every few thousand years. Eclipses. Many of you joined us back in January for the total lunar eclipse, which was a fantastic celestial event. And if you were to be standing on the moon during this eclipse, this visualization will give you a kind of an idea of what you would see. Up here in the top left corner, we have the Earth with the sun shining on it, and the moon slowly making its way into the shadow of the Earth. As it passes deeper and deeper into the shadow, the light begins to change. And that red you see during totality is our own atmosphere projected onto the surface of the moon. The images below, if you were to be standing on the moon during a total lunar eclipse, you would start to see the Earth eclipse the sun. You would start to see the light change from a beautiful white light to a blue, and then to a yellow or auburn, and then during totality, see this fantastic red ring around the Earth, projecting and being surrounded by this red light. In my opinion, we need to go back to the moon just to capture this. Well, many of us saw this total lunar eclipse, and many of us were able to do some photography of it. This is an example of what we saw. Imagine this bright full moon on a clear winter night slowly begin to darken and then turn red. Red for a solid hour, and then slowly begin to darken again and back to a full moon as if nothing happened. Total solar eclipses. This is an incredible cosmic coincidence. We know the sun's distance from the Earth is about 400 times the moon's distance, and the sun's diameter is about 400 times the moon's diameter. Earth is the only place we know of in the solar system where you can witness a total solar eclipse. The Great American Eclipse was 2 years ago. The next one here in North America is April 8th, 2024. It'll start down in Mexico, work its way up through Dallas, Cleveland, and Buffalo. This is what a lot of people in Orlando saw. We had 90% coverage from here in Orlando, so the moon would have covered a lot more than the sun than this, but this was an image that someone had gotten with the space station in the picture. Bailey's beads is a fantastic phenomenon as the moon slowly begins to take over and completely eclipse the sun. You start to see the topography of the moon coming through canyons, craters, mountains, those last bits of light shining through the textures of the moon. The diamond ring effect. Again, the last moments before totality. And then if you're ever lucky enough August 12th, 2045, we'll have a total solar eclipse right here in Orlando with totality lasting around 6 minutes. So mark your calendars for that fantastic event. The amazing thing about eclipses also, total solar eclipses, they helped prove Einstein's theory of general relativity. Sir Arthur Eddington in 1919 made Einstein famous. His papers had been out for 15 years before he really became famous by proving that the mass of an object could bend time and space, and that a star that you may not normally be able to see, you can now see via total solar eclipse, because now that its light is visible. Well, let's take our trip to the moon. We've been talking about the moon. Let's go pay it a visit. We're going to start off at Earth. And it was 50 years ago, this summer, 50 years ago, that 3 brave men set out on a journey 238,000 miles away from the Earth. Prior to that incredible event, Apollo 8 astronauts took the famous Earthrise photograph, gave birth to the Earth's environmental movement. You see, before that picture, we had never seen the Earth in its isolated beauty out in space. Imagine traveling 3 days through the darkness. Many of the astronauts said that one of the most amazing memories they have of the journey was flying behind the moon. The complete absence of light, blocked out by the far side with no light. The moon is tidally locked with the Earth. It has a 27.5-day average orbit around the Earth. And that's the same time for the moon to rotate on its axis. This is called synchronous rotation. So there is no dark side of the moon. The moon gets equal amounts of light on all sides. It really should be called the far side of the moon, because we never see this side, and somehow it got named after a psychedelic rock album from the 60s. The far side of the moon has a very different topography, geology, than the side that we see. A great lack of mares, very, very cratered. A couple stats on the moon is it's over 2,000 miles in diameter. 27% that of Earth. It's got 17% of Earth's gravity. A day on the moon is over 700 hours. And the temperature swings very wildly. Without an atmosphere, daytime on the moon can reach 273 degrees Fahrenheit. 280 degrees below zero at night. Some of the new scientific evidence, though, has brought some temperatures, some new record temperatures actually. Some of the coldest temperatures ever recorded in our solar system have come from the moon in recent measurements. 415 degrees below zero. Well, let's talk about our trips to the moon, our competition with Russia to get there. We'll start off with the Soviet Union and some of the major notable missions were Luna 2, 3, and 9. And these Luna missions, they were designed to collect information about the moon, its environment, not only scientific purposes, but also to be used in the planning of the future lunar missions. And these included manned missions to the moon, flybys, lunar orbiting, and soft landing missions. The Russians beat us at almost every task except the big one, putting human beings on the moon. The Apollo program was the United States version of putting astronauts on the moon. And it set several major human scientific milestones, and the program returned 842 pounds of lunar rocks and soil to Earth. And this greatly contributed to the understanding of the moon's composition and geological history. Apollo also spurred advances in many areas of technology incidental to rocketry and human spaceflight, including advanced avionics, telecommunications, and even the computer that you've got in your pocket right now. Well, these are just a few of the surface images captured by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, currently in orbit around the moon, has been in orbit around the moon for many, many years. It's been studying the surface in detail, preparing for the Artemis missions. In 2024, NASA is sending men and women back to the lunar surface. Why are we going back? Well, the moon will serve as a gateway to Mars and many other locations for human exploration in our solar system. There are still many pressing, unanswered scientific questions about our nearest space neighbor, and orbiting satellites have revealed evidence that its surface contains hidden reserves of water. Water can be used for a lunar base, refueling spacecraft. This is a huge discovery. Well, where does that take us next? NASA is working on Orion, the Space Launch System, and the Orion capsule that will take astronauts back to the moon. They'll actually go to what's called a lunar gateway. The lunar gateway will orbit the moon, and they will live and work in that orbit. The crew will take expeditions from the gateway to the surface of the moon in a new human landing system before returning to their orbital outpost. Artemis 1, the first test, is scheduled for 2020. We'll see if we make that date. Artemis 2 is scheduled for 2022. This will be the first test with crew on board. And Artemis 3, 2024, a moon landing. Well, our moon is one of just hundreds, if not potentially thousands, in our solar system. We're discovering moons all the time. If you've been watching the news recently, Saturn is the new moon champion. 20 more moons were discovered on Saturn, surpassing Jupiter now. With 82 moons, it is now the moon leader in our solar system. Well, let's go visit a couple other moons that have incredible significance to the space program and to potential life. We're going to travel to Jupiter next, and we're going to visit Europa. Europa is an icy world, a small moon orbiting Jupiter, one of the Galilean moons discovered 400 years ago. The Europa Clipper mission is designed to fly to Europa to look for evidence of life. It's scheduled to launch in 2025. They haven't chosen the rocket yet, but it could be the SLS, it could be the Delta IV Heavy, or the Falcon Heavy. Originally designed as a drilling mission, this will now include 45 orbits of Jupiter, studying the surface and interior with a suite of instruments on board. It can't actually orbit the moon itself because Jupiter's radiation is so powerful that the spacecraft would likely last about a month. If it orbits Jupiter, it can make 45 passes, detailed passes, doing studies of this moon. And this moon has an iron core, it has an icy crust, and a liquid interior. There is more water on Europa than on Earth. The goal of this mission is to explore this moon, investigate its habitability, and aid in the selection of a landing site for the future Europa lander, to be able to drill through the ice, take a sample of that liquid water to see what's inside. The spacecraft will study the liquid water, its chemistry, and energy sources using thermal imaging and ultraviolet spectrograph instruments. But that's not all. If we travel almost 1 billion miles from the sun to Saturn, we have an incredible moon named Titan. And earlier this summer, NASA made an incredible announcement about the Dragonfly mission. Many of you know about Cassini and the Huygens probe, and the Huygens probe landing on the surface of Titan, discovering liquid pools, rivers, and lakes of liquid methane. Well, the Titan Dragonfly mission is a mission to travel back to Titan and do a more intensive study looking for signs of life. This launch is scheduled for 2026 with a landing in 2034 in the Shangri-La dune fields of Titan. Titan has a complex carbon-rich chemistry on the surface and a liquid ice-dominated world with an interior water ocean. This makes it a high priority target for astrobiology and the origin of life studies. This mission will send a mobile robotic rotorcraft lander, a drone ship, to Titan in order to study its prebiotic chemistry. Scientists believe that this world on Titan would be very, very similar to the primordial soup that started life on Earth. And this drone ship will be able to perform vertical takeoffs and landings, studying a 5-mile perimeter on this icy moon. And just announced earlier this month, another moon on Saturn, Enceladus. October 2nd, NASA announced that it had confirmed the discovery of new kinds of organic compounds, the ingredients of amino acids on Enceladus. These were detected from Cassini 3 years ago. Now we know Cassini is gone, but Cassini data is still traveling back to Earth and being processed by NASA scientists. Will Cassini be our next mission to look for life? Well, as we travel back to Earth, and the next time you get a chance to observe the moon, take that extra second and appreciate how wonderful it is to have this object stabilizing our planet. And who knows, in the next 5, maybe 10 years tops, we'll have both men and women working and using the resources on the moon to take us further and further out into space. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. All righty. I'm feeling blue. Wow, all right. Oh, we had talked about outreaches and one of the places that we had outreach was at Carillion Elementary. And there you go. There you go. She joined us one of our members and had an absolute blast. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was really fun.
All right. And so some of us had scopes. Bob and Ginger brought their scope. I brought mine. Len Ward had brought his scope. And so Katarina had acted as an ambassador. And as I keep telling you all, you don't need a telescope to come out if we're doing an outreach. You can be an ambassador for us and just talk to people. And she had a tablet, and that would show constellations, positions of planets, that sort of thing. And just, it's wonderful. Let's tell you that you really have a good time just talking to people and answering their questions. And we had what, 600-700 there between students and parents. So it was quite a turnout. It was rescheduled originally from the week of Hurricane Dorian was in close proximity, so they canceled until a couple weeks later. So that was a good time. Anybody have anything else? No? Well, thank you all to the presenters who did programs. And thank you to those board members who have served us for a number of years. Mr. Vogel. All right.
And Eric,
your humor.
Thank you.
This will be the last you'll be seeing of me for till Saturday. Till Saturday a week. Samira, even though she wasn't on. Sorry about that. And thank you all who were nominated and accepted the nominations or now officers. All right. That's it. I think that wraps the meeting up. Dismissed.